Local recordings. Hello and good evening. Welcome back to Ending Well with Minnelle. I am very happy to be back. I've enjoyed a nice hiatus, a nice break, some time to regroup and meet new people, make new connections. So I'm excited for some of the guests that will be on this year. Again, this is going to be live bi-weekly. So you will see me every other Thursday right here at 7 o'clock. Join the live conversation, jump in the comments, ask your questions, give your feedback, or wait, and the recaps will be on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, everywhere. So you will not miss out if you missed a live conversation. Fear not. Tonight, I am joined by the lovely David Eady. I had the pleasure of meeting, actually, I'm going to have to ask him how we met again because it's missing me right now. Regardless, right? He and I are like kindred spirits. I appreciate his passion that he has for estate planning. So we are going to be going over and speaking about his fantastic book, Executor's Help. And you can get the book, you can get the audiobook for people like me. We will talk all about it. And I was very happy to be a guest on his podcast as well. So let's share information. So at this time, without further ado, allow me to introduce you to David Eady. I don't have any audio things in the background.
But I'm a bit uncomfortable being called lovely, but if you want to go with that, sure, let's go with lovely. But all right.
The comparable.
Handsome, debonair, Denzel-like. we could go with that. But anyway, it's your show. Go ahead.
That reminds me of my dad. He would say that. He has a whole list of attributes that he likes to run down when you run out of things to say about him. It's something witty, debonair, something. Yeah, it's a whole list.
And the first thing you thought about me was lovely.
Sorry, okay. Never mind. As you can tell, it's going to be a good time. Yes, we were talking estates, but we are real people who are sharing our experiences and our passion. So, David, can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
My name is David Eady. I'm a certified executive advisor, also financial advisor. I've been so for the last 35 years here in beautiful La Belle Province, Montreal, Quebec.
Mm-hmm. And he is a non-French speaker, but that is okay because they've
born and raised in Quebec. It doesn't matter. There's still anglophones here. There's no need to bring that up.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Very touchy. Okay, well, I don't know what you bring that up for.
I'm so sorry.
All right, it's all good.
All right. So let's talk about your book. For those who haven't read it as yet, what brought, like you hinted a little bit of your story, but can you give us a little bit of your why? Why did you write the book? Why did you feel so passionate about helping executors?
Well, basically what happened was I wrote the book because every time people I would hear about, I would tell people what I was going through. And at the time, it was an estate problem. It took our family to finally get it fixed. 7 years, 10 court appearances, and $50,000 of lawyer's fees. And I didn't want people to go through what I went through. And so I wrote the book. And that's because I've always would hear about an executor having a problem settling estate. I'd hear about a family not talking to each other for years, or people just not getting along and people breaking up. So, during COVID, I figured, okay, I might as well write the book. Can't travel, can't go anywhere. So I might as well write the book. And that's what I did.
I love that. I love that you took that time. A lot of us took that downtime to either regroup or to do some projects that we've been dreaming of. So congratulations on finishing a book, because I know that is quite a feat. Now,
thank you.
So in the book, you talk a lot. I like how this is structured first. So if you haven't read it, it's not just a front to back booklet. So you can really pick it up from anywhere. And there's also question and answers in the back. So if you just need an answer for something really quickly, it's almost like a guide or a support in that way. But in it, you talk about, what am I making sure right? The estate triangle of conflict. Can you tell us what is this estate triangle of conflict and how do people avoid it?
Well, what I noticed with any estate, if someone's an executor, if there's no will, or if there's a second marriage, or if the family just doesn't get along, even if there's just one element, which is one element from one of those three there, you've got a mess. And so I dubbed it the triangle estate of conflict, and if you've got two out of the three, you got to, and if you got 3 out of 3, it's a big problem. So you have to recognize that it's a possibility that if an individual is going to be asked to be an executor, or someone doesn't have a will, and there's other problems, second marriage, blended family, families don't get along, you've just made a lot of left the legacy with a mess.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, right? A lot of times in our brains, we think everybody's going to get along, everything will be fine. But on my side as a funeral director, right? Like I see a lot of these stories where it might be fine, but we think differently. And then because of that conflict, like what did you say? Like you see the reality of your relationship when someone has passed, because now there's no other opportunity to say what you want to say. There's no other opportunity to do what you want to do. It's all now happening, and the executors and the beneficiaries and the family is left to deal with the mess, and your real self start to show. So yeah.
Yeah, because even though you and I might, and I wrote the book, and being an advisor, I hear about it all the time. You being in your industry, being a pre-planner, you hear it all the time. People are going to be watching us and going, these two are knuckleheads. You have no idea. My family gets along immensely. Oh, at Christmas, the cakes, and you should see the meatloaf that's brought, or whatever nonsense, or in the summer we get together. These two have no idea what we're talking about. Let me tell you something. You don't know about somebody until you got to share an inheritance with them. And I know full well. And that's where the problem is, because you, as an individual, you have absolutely no idea how people are going to behave when you're not there. What makes it easier on them is for you to have a will and have an estate plan set up, so at least you can let them know what your wishes are, and hopefully the values that you've built up and how you hope to pass on to the next generation, that they'll follow along, and hopefully they'll stay together. But far too often, so many families just break up from that. If you look at the TV show Succession, what is that show about? It's about a guy, at some point he's going to die, and he's got 3 knucklehead kids who want to take over the business, and he's not going to have it. So when he's going to pass away, there's going to be a problem. And so that's where we come from, the triangle of conflict. You've got kids that don't get along, and there's a problem. So family, every family starts out to be perfect, and we know every family's got issues. I'm sure there's people in your family that you could think of that are just just by looking at you, you just made that face. They just popped in your mind who they were. Everybody has them, but everybody likes to think, oh, our families will get along. Everything changes where there's an inheritance, when there's a death. People have what I call, a friend of mine, Cindy Aldridge, calls the curse of inheritance, whereby they believe that even though there's unearned wealth, that they're entitled to something. And that's where the problems start.
Yeah. Because it's everything, right? It's not like when someone has passed, now it's everything in your life that you had promised me, everything that you didn't do, that, like every way that you didn't live up to my expectations of who you were, now are part of your estate.
Well,
there's a lot more to it than just getting what you're receiving. Sorry, go ahead.
Beneficiaries, you got to look at it this way. Within an estate, if you're writing a will or you want to leave a legacy, you're looking at you're leaving somebody a gift. I'm going to leave something to them. Whereas on the other hand, the person who's going to be receiving it, the beneficiary, they only see it as a check. And they see that as could be a lottery winning to them. And whatever financial difficulties they might have had in their life, it's going to change because they're getting for that check. And if they know there's a check coming to them, or there's money coming to them, they're all logic, all decorum of treating each other as human beings goes out the window.
Yeah. So I know you talk a lot in your book about executors, and also executors and joint accounts. There were some stories that you shared about people who had access to the cottage, people who have access to accounts and just dipped with it, just took the money and disappeared. So as executors, how can people protect their plan so that as best as possible, it actually gets to who they intended for it to go to?
Okay, so the executor, which is, I'm going to tell you right now, that's the worst job in the world that you could ever ask for somebody to do. So it's because you're doing somebody a favor. You're the executor, you're carrying out the wishes of the testator, the person who's written the will. So as the executor, you have to understand the responsibilities of what you're going to have to do. On average, it takes about 100 hours to settle an estate, anywhere between 18 to 24 months. Just make sure the estate is settled. And since COVID, it's taken even longer. So if you are going to take on the responsibility of being an executor, understand what the job is about. And if you're the testator, someone who's writing the will, and you want to make sure that your estate is going to run properly, you want to make sure that you open the eyes of the executor and let them know what they actually are involved with. That's why I say this is the worst job you could ever put on. Well, you wouldn't put it on your worst enemy because they could care less about you. But if you're asking a family, and 99% of most people who are asked to be executors, they have absolutely no idea how to start, where to go, what to do. Over and above that, they have to think about getting over the grief of the loss of somebody, whether it's a friend or it's a family member. And now they're left with the task of settling the estate, paying the taxes, and also dealing with ungrateful beneficiaries.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. I think many times we just assume that, okay, my children will be the executor. I'm just going to list them and it's going to be even. I'll put them both as executors, so they have to do it together, and then that will be fine. Without realizing that if you put both of them down as executors, now they both have to agree on everything that takes place, and they have to be present to sign everything. It just becomes a little bit more work, right? A lot of us don't realize those things.
And throw in one of the elements from the triangle of conflict. They don't get along. So now you're asking someone to settle the estate for two people, have two people settle it, and they don't get along. They can't even stand being in the same room with each other. In our case, we were three. You would expect, and everything was supposed to be split a third. I'm not going to say who. One sibling believed no, they're entitled to more. Hence why I was in court for 7 years, 10 court appearances and $50,000 in lawyer's fees. So it's you go full circle in terms of, and where my parents made the mistake, and what I emphasize in the book, my parents didn't have the conversation with all of us. They didn't say what their wishes are. And I also have to take responsibility. I'm a financial advisor. For years, I always would be, when they would clients would come in and sit down with the lawyer and have a talk, I'd usually be there as a go-between because they might forget something, they don't understand the legalese, some questions, stuff like that. That day my mom and dad came in because I was getting my will done. My mom and dad was getting their will done, and one of my sisters was getting there, and her husband were getting their will done. So I had the whole family getting done except for one sibling. And when it came time to do my parents, I wasn't in the room. I wasn't there because I could not fathom talking about the demise, my parents dying. I couldn't do it. One sister was in there and she was able to go through, but even though I knew it was in the will, everything should have been split 3 ways. My parents never said, okay, this is what we wanted. And hence what a lot of families end up with, if there's no conversations, the paperwork does the talking, and then we got problems.
That's the thing, right? So you think, like, even when we create things, we think we do them as clearly as we possibly can. But without, like, I was just talking to someone about this today, about whether you should do your will with a lawyer, whether you should do it yourself, whether you should do one of those like legal will kits, something like that. And I'm like, for me, the way I think about it, there's levels to it, right? If you've got nothing else and you write it down, at least you did something. But ideally, you want someone who's going to think about the things right? But at least,
no, not just write it down. Aretha Franklin, she wrote it down. She had 6 wills.
Yes.
All holographs. And what could possibly go wrong with 6 wills floating around? So the writing of your own will on a holograph, so that, throw that one out. That's not there. What you want to look at, sorry?
It's not ideal, but if someone isn't going to do anything at all, I'd rather you do that than pass with nothing written down, with no direction at all. If it's that or nothing, not that it's at the top, but if that or nothing,
Suppose, we're going to get into argument because this is your show, but suppose I find that will that you scribble, and I really don't like it, what it says in there. I just crunch it up and throw it in the garbage, and we're starting from ground zero. So why not take the extra step and do it online, or spend money and talk to a professional like a lawyer. The legal kits that you can do online, like Legal Wills and Wilco, I think it's called. You,
Real cool.
so you could use them. They're backed by working with lawyers and notaries, or go into an office. There's no excuse that you shouldn't not have an estate plan and an upstate plan. But unfortunately, 60% of Canadians and almost as much as Americans don't have an up-to-date will, don't have an up-to-date plan. And I can tell you, you need to have those conversations, because when you're somebody's in intensive care, it's not the place to find out that there's no will. And I can assure you, you can't have a meaningful conversation with anybody when they're on a ventilator. So why not take the steps, do it online, go see a lawyer, and make sure that everything is taken care of.
Ideally, right?
Ideally.
But let's talk about that, right? Because the same thing, there's a lot, like, look at that number. There's a lot of people who don't have wills, and we are in it. We talk about it. We can speak about it from the rooftop, and still there's the trifecta. Well, not trifecta, but there's a list of people. So the ones who don't even want to think about it, right? I am not going to pass. I don't want to think about passing. I don't want to do it. There are those ones who understand that it's important and are in almost process, I just don't know what to do, so I don't know. And then there's the ones who have a will, but it's outdated and keep saying they're going to get back to it, right? So how do we engage those people in their different stages to actually get it completed?
Well, let's start with the first one. The one that says, "Oh, I don't want to," of that. Spoiler alert: we're all going to die. So here's the problem. So we're going to take care of that one. So I'm just going to let you know that's going to happen. So you can make the decision: what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Do you want to leave a legacy, or do you want to leave a legacy in a mess? Okay, so there's that group. So you need to do something, and we can talk a little bit about how to prepare to go see the lawyer. We could talk about that a little bit later, but at least do something. Get a will started, especially if you have young children. I talk about in the book one of my friends where she had her will done because she remembers as a child that her fate was decided in the parking lot of the funeral home. One aunt, her mother had already passed away. It was at her father's funeral, and in the parking lot, one aunt took her and uncle, and the other aunt and uncle took her brother. And even though she's a successful business person today, she made sure that she didn't want her kids to go through what she went through, because every time her aunt needed money for whatever reason, the government now is involved. So they had to go petition the court for extra, for school activities and that sort of stuff. So if you've got small children, you need to have a will. You need to have a guardian in place. I talk about, how to get that conversation and how to pick a guardian in the book. But if you don't have a will and you've got small children, it's imperative that you do, because now you're just saying, hey, I want the province to look after my kids if something was to happen to me, and if both both parents are gone. So you need to do that. The other group that you were talking about, well, I don't know how to get started. It's easy to get started, or if you already have a will, you know what? It's time to step up and have the conversations. And there's two, and the book is written for two types of people. It's someone who's been asked been asked to be an executor, and then it's also for the people who are preparing their estate and they want to have an executor. How do they choose one? How do they have the conversations with their family? How do they pick an executor? Those sort of things. So it's a lot easier. So they don't leave just the paperwork to do the talking for them if they're not there anymore. So I've got starter questions in the book about how to have a conversation with the executor and also with your family. You need to prepare them. You need an executor when you're dead, but you need to prepare them while you're alive. So that's what we're working towards, to do that. And then the third you were talking about is the second marriage, the blended family. Again, what could possibly go wrong? We've already got an element of the triangle of conflict. So you've got your first set of children, and you've got the second set of children. How are you going to treat them in the estate? If something was to happen, are we going to have conflict because there's a second marriage? So you want to have those conversations with your new spouse, and also actually I had somebody on my podcast recently, and he realized that first off, he didn't have a will, and so he did get one
Mhm.
divorce, and he decided that he wanted to make those changes and do something because he got a bad rating on an insurance policy,
Mhm.
and he was worried if something was to happen. He was trying to level up and get more insurance, and he
Mhm.
was worried that if something was to happen to him, his kids were going to suffer, and he didn't want that to happen. So by him having having a will and getting organized, setting up trusts for them, he one day on the way to picking up the kids, he to his ex-wife had a conversation, and that
Mhm.
spurred her on to go talk to her current husband, because they hadn't had that conversation, and she didn't think about what would happen with
Mhm.
her if something was to happen to her, or both of them are gone. What would happen to her kids? So
Yeah.
it's sort of a spiraling effect once you get the conversation going. Far too often people avoid the subject because just
Mhm.
by, well, if
Yeah.
just by talking, they think talking about it, they're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
think it. Or there's someone who's going to be, it's going to put it off. It's not the right time. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do, later never comes. And
Mhm.
then there's the people that are apathetic and say, well, you know what? I'm dead. It's not my problem. Let everybody else do it. There's a lot of those too. So,
It's getting smaller though. The amount of people who are speaking that way are diminishing, and I'm very thankful for that because
and that's because
Mhm.
they probably seen other
Yeah.
friends, other people, the mess and the
Yeah.
destruction that'll leave into a family if you're not organized. That's why I always say
Mhm.
you can leave a legacy, or you can leave a legacy and a mess. Your choice.
Mhm. A lot of people think, like when I pass, you don't think about what happens until you've experienced this, until you've gone through the process of dealing with. Now, I haven't, thank God, haven't to close any of my family, immediate family members closing our estates, but I can see from what I've done how many times, just how much is involved, how much we think, even like the people who think I just have a simple estate, I don't have much, I just have a house, or not even, I have a couple banks accounts and maybe some insurance. So it's not going to be important. I don't have to do anything. It's amazing how much everybody will want $100. Like it's a small thing, but everyone will have an idea on how that $100 should be spent. So
Right.
big, small, whatever your estate is, please plan. Always plan. Always write it down. So for those who have little estates, what are some things that they should start getting ready for? Because I know like the more complicated your estate is, the more we have to do. So just talk about someone with a simple estate.
Well, if are you saying real estate or estate? What did you
Estate,
say?
sorry,
So
estate, like an estate.
estate.
Yeah.
So you want to, and you want to be prepared.
Hmm.
So if you decide, and even if you decide to do it online, or if you go see a lawyer, you got to be prepared to have in mind who's going to be the executor, who's
Hmm.
going to be the guardian. I talked about my friend, why she did what she did. Who are going to be the beneficiaries? Okay, now if you've got a blended family, how are you going to handle that?
Hmm.
Who's going to make the medical decisions for you? You might have a will because you're only going to die once, but suppose you become disabled. That could go on for years, and you need someone to look after you. So there's the will, there's the power of attorney. Quebec, we've also got the mandate of incapacity. So you want to have those for someone to also make those medical decisions for you.
Hmm.
How philanthropic do you want to be? Do you want to give money to charity? Because there will be some tax benefits, but not only that, it could be also a cause that you believe in, that you want to leave something behind. Maybe you were giving something smaller you always wanted to give, and maybe
Hmm.
part of your estate, which is going to be a lot larger, you'd like to leave a lasting effect. Then you want to have talk about specific items that you want to give away. I can tell you the story of a friend of mine. Him and his brother haven't spoken for 20 years over Royal Dalton China. His mother left the Royal Dalton China to, and it mentioned in the will, she left it to his wife. They're
Hmm.
cleaning out the house, and the brother said, I really like that Royal Dalton China. I want to give it to my daughter. Friend said, go speak to my wife. He came back. She doesn't want to give it to me. Your wife is a B, 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 B. So they haven't spoken in 20 years over Royal Dalton China. So it's you might roll your eyes, but for the people, and I read about in the book, people will fight over a lava lamp. So it's a whole. You want to make sure that you've made allowances if there's something specific like jewelry or rings and stuff like that. I know of people that have gone into the house before the executor can go change the locks, and they just think it's like a flea market. That they're just grabbing everything. And she told me I could have this, and I could no. Change your executor. Here's another thing: go change the locks. Nobody's going in there until we take an inventory and we figure out what's supposed to go to others. Another thing you need to figure out is about pets. A lot of people don't think of, you think the pet is part of your family. In the eyes of the law, pet is a property.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't have allowance for that, they're going to end up at the SPCA or somewhere else that you may not want. So you want to make allowance for that. If you have a business, you want not only do you want to have a will, you also want to have a succession plan, because you want to make sure that the business continues on. Maybe it's either going to be sold, it's either going to be family member will take it over, or you're going to shut it down. Those things over and above the will. If you're a business owner, you need to have a succession plan. And you also need to think about, which a lot of people don't think about, is what if the beneficiary dies before me? Who, will it go to the next person or someone else, or a percentage or something like that? These are the conversations, things that you need to think about, whether you're going to write the will online or you're going to go sit in front of a lawyer. That they're going to ask the questions. But the other main thing, because it doesn't matter what size of your estate it could be, is that we haven't talked about is your digital assets. Digital assets are anything you ever done online or you've got up in the cloud. So what would happen if, you've got your Amazon, you've got your banking information, how do you get into your cell phone, your social media, all the different social media outlets have their own protocol, how to shut down an account. A friend of mine 6 months ago, she's passed away over a year. Her birthday just came up about 6 months ago. And I'm first thing, as soon as I saw that, going, the executor doesn't know how to shut that off. But there was no conversation. There's no separate sheet of paper for all the logins and passwords. They say that for every email address, there's probably about 160 different places where that email address is being used to open up an online account. So, your cell phone, your iPad, your computer, all of those digital assets have to be accounted for. And along with the will, your power of attorney, you should have a list of all those logins and passwords.
Whew. So simple, right?
Absolutely. It's simple if you got the book. It's easy.
There you go. It's just a process, right? It's checking off and going through the process. I know we're coming to the end, but I do, like, you were talking about this, that you made me think of key person insurance. Like, all of these things, a lot of people think, for me, at the funeral home, they think, oh, I've got insurance, it's going to cover my funeral. Can you talk a little bit to how they can use insurance to help close an estate?
Well, it depends. If the insurance is left to an individual, then that's the beneficiaries can pay there. But if it's left to the estate, then the executor has to make decisions. Is it paid a funeral? Is it going to be, are we going to need the taxes? That's why I always say, don't pay nobody until you sat down with an accountant and you know what the taxes are before you pay out a thing. So the goal of the executor is first, make sure the taxes are paid, get then the beneficiaries, and then make sure you get the certificate of clearance from CRA. Everybody might, at that point, everybody's going to come, well, when am I going to get my check? You give nobody nothing until you make sure that the estate is, the taxes are taken care of. Because you, as the executor, you are going to be held liable. And CRA is going to come back for you. And you really don't want CRA on your back. And especially, you're the executor, and this is not your estate. So they're going to come back. So you want to make sure, I talk about the 3 professionals, the minimum that you need to work with: a financial advisor, an accountant, and a lawyer. But at most points, you're probably going to end up using 16 different professionals. You might need a real estate agent, an auctioneer. There's tons of other executives. So you need money. That's also where the money's going to come from the insurance that's in the estate, which means you have to keep an inventory of what's being sold. What's been sold and what you're spending it on. And the key to everything is keep in communication with the beneficiaries. It doesn't take long if they don't hear from you for them to look sideways and say he's up to something or she's up to something. Let's get them in court. So every couple of weeks, a Zoom call, email. This is how the estate is going on. Like I said before, the testator left a legacy. They left a gift to somebody. To the beneficiary, that's a check. Where's my money? I want it now. I don't want to hear your problems about the tax. I don't want to hear when am I getting paid? But as the executor, you have to let them understand what the process is. That was pretty a long answer. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I'm laughing because I'm thinking, you know what would happen? You know what it's like if you pay out to the beneficiaries first and then taxes are owing. How are you going to say, excuse me, I need some of that money back? It's gone.
Yeah.
Like you can't
good
do
luck.
that.
Good luck with that. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm down in Jamaica. When I get back, no, I spent all my money is gone. Sorry, it's tied up. So pay nobody until you make sure the taxes and the debts are covered, and then you move on from there. And again, keep in contact. Let them know what's going on. Don't go silent, because that's where you get into more problems.
Yeah. David, this was a great conversation. I feel like, a lot, right? We went over so many things, much more than we had planned. So this is great. Can you please tell everybody where they can get your book?
You can go to Amazon. It's at all the online retailers, but the easiest thing is just go to davideady.com. There, you can click and buy wherever you want. If you want, for your listening pleasure, if you'd like to hear my voice, I will read the book to you. So you can do all your things and make notes while I'm talking to you. So if you just go to my website, davideady.com. So even there, there's a quiz to find out what kind of family you are. I got a free resource of checklist as an executor. Maybe if you're the executor, you say to the person, hey, put this with your will. So I've got this checklist. A client of mine, her mom passed away this week, and she, there's a business side and that's why I put the first part about grief. You need to handle the grief, but there's also the business side that's got taken care of. But she's got the checklist of what she needs to go, and that's been a great help to her, because most people don't know where to start. They don't know what to do, how to get going. And in a tough time like this, you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and it's got to get done, but you need to take the time to grieve too.
Yeah.
So davideady.com. Sorry, another long answer. davideady.com. Buy the book. Get free resources. All my socials are on there.
Beautiful. You got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined and came through. If you're watching afterwards, please share this with somebody else, because this is great information. And the more we talk about it, the more we normalize these conversations, it's easier for people to take steps to do what needs to be done. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you, David. Everyone.
Thank you, Minnelle, for everything you're doing. It's a great job.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.